Hello, we are the Justified Ancients of Ashai. I am Jonik Caliph.
And I'm Esoteric.
Today we are talking about House of the Dragon, Season 2, Episode 2. This one is entitled
Rhaenyra the Cruel.
But the whole episode is about a character who was never shown, and that character was Viserys the Peaceful. In the very beginning, we see Aegon destroying the model that Viserys built of Valyria. And this is a metaphor for the whole episode, because it is Viserys' legacy that gets destroyed. His legacy of peace and his legacy of keeping the kingdom together. The first instance we see of that is this model, this thing he worked like his entire life on that we saw in the season 1. It gets destroyed in a minute by Aegon's anger and rage at the loss of his son. What else did we see?
So, obviously, we already know that there's a major break between the Greens and the Black side of the family, caused by Aegon crowning himself or getting crowned king, and then Rhaenyra crowns herself queen. So you have a break between them. The break went even further once Viserys was killed by Daemon, so you have that break there. But in this episode, it continues it on because there was recently the murder of Aegon's son, Jaehaerys. In this episode, everybody's coming to grips with the new murder. It was horrific. A little child was beheaded in his bed, and we're dealing with the aftermath of that. So the children in the family are paying the price for that. Another thing that we noted was a break between Rhaenyra and Daemon. They always seem to have like a really cozy relationship, a really close relationship beforehand. But this war is taking its toll even on their relationship. When Rhaenyra is getting the moniker Rhaenyra the Cruel, she deduces that Daemon was somehow responsible for this.
Yeah, and we see that with just a look, right? I mean, I think the acting and the direction in this is so spot on, especially in this episode, because we see so many looks that just tell so much. And we see that because Rhaenyra doesn't have to say anything. She just knows by looking at him and that smirk he has that he was responsible for this, even though he didn't directly order it. It would not have happened without what he did. And he directed what ended up happening versus how much he wanted that to happen. That's up for discussion. We see these two separating, right? We see these two coming apart. She says she never trusts him, and he shows his impulsiveness and his failure to think before he acts. We see that in him. All those are things that were the opposite of Viserys. It was why Viserys was always more tempered for the throne.
Yeah, it's the first time that you actually hear outright Daemon saying basically his brother had it out for him by saying that the only reason why he took being the heir away from him is because Viserys feared that he would be overshadowed by Daemon if Daemon was to be his successor. And just out of spite, that's why he did it. And he even said to Rhaenyra, "What do you think he picked you because you're so brilliant, you're so wise, you're so great? No, he picked you because he knew you would never be as great as him. And that's why he did it," which I don't believe is the case. I also feel like, going back to what you said about Daemon not ordering the death of Jaehaerys, I wondered that. I think the episode leaves it unclear. However, the Ratcatcher specifically asked him the question of what do we do if we can't find Aemond? And it didn't show him saying nothing. Just he had a look on his face like he was going to say someone's dying. You know what I mean? But they didn't show it. They left it ambiguous. And I feel like when it comes to Daemon, they leave a lot of things kind of ambiguous, like his true support for Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra starts to question whether or not he's only with her because if he can't be heir, he'll be the next best thing to it. She questions whether or not he really just wants to be the one ruling, because when she was giving birth, he was trying to start a war behind her back without her input into it. And he also denies this. He said when we got the crown her father wore. Daemon is like, "I'm the one who went immediately and placed it on your head." He was using it as a measure to show that he supports her. She said, "I want you to tell me right now that you accept me as your queen and as your ruler too." And he refused to answer the question.
Going to another part, there's a procession where they bring the baby out in front of the people, and that's where they say the name of Rhaenyra the Cruel. And when they're talking about this, I think you kind of see Otto's craftiness of trying to manipulate the people, the public. He knows this is going to be a lot of public relations war. I think that's also something that Viserys would have ever agreed to. He would have, that he would have been appalled by that kind of a thing. and I think there's a line in there when they're discussing it where Otto says, "You will have your war." What he's basically saying, which we all know because it's pretty much the whole point of the show, is the Civil War. We know a civil war is coming. He knows the civil war is coming. The war is coming. But in this episode, really, it's the pre-war, the antebellum, as it were, and it's setting that up by all these conditions. Before the war happens, we have to see that all the pieces are immeasurably broken,
Yeah.
and all those pieces, not only are they broken, is the piece broken, but even within themselves, they're broken people. We see in even the plans, that whole concept of the PR issue, it gets terrible because they get stuck in the mud. Again, another metaphor. Like the whole plan gets stuck in the mud, and it just shows the torment of Allison and Helena. The plan to show them off and show their grief, and the PR plan was so almost inhumane, so
Yeah.
indecent. Again, below anything of that Viserys or any good king would ever approve of.
Yeah. To be fair, I mean, Aegon really didn't want that either, and he didn't really approve of it, but his council really pushed it that it would be good. So, yeah, well, I mean, I guess he allowed it, but really, at this point, is Aegon really in control? Like, is King Aegon really making the rulings, or are people at this point controlling him? However, we see a break in that. Because before this moment, he was very much under the wing of his mother and his grandfather, Otto Hightower. And we see by the end of the episode that relationship, at least with the grandfather, is definitively over as Aegon fires him because he wasn't doing enough. Aegon wanted war with Rhaenyra after the death of his son, and Otto was cautious, warning to be cautious, to try to be judicious, to not do anything irrational or rash. Don't do anything rash. So you see a break there in the firing of his grandfather and of who he's taking advice from. You also see a break with his mother because at the end you see that he reaches for his mother. He wanted her to say, "No, let's not bring the baby through the streets," and he was looking for her to back him in that, because he was like, "Surely you would agree that this is an awful thing." And the mother didn't back him in it. And she said, "No, I think we need to do this." But she didn't realize that she was going to have to be the one, because at the end, Aegon didn't have to walk the child down the street. It was Queen Alicent that did. But I think he felt really hurt by that. And later on in the episode, you see that Aegon is crying, and she doesn't go to console him at all. Like, she sees he's crying and she just walks out of the room.
So I think one point is when he fires Otto, again, that's more of Viserys' legacy, right? Otto was his hand.
It's one of these things he mentioned it earlier where you could tell a lot just from looks between Aegon and his wife, Helena. After the death of their son, they can barely even look at each other. And they have the scene where she's coming back from the funeral procession and she runs into Aegon in the hallway and she stops as if to speak with him or be consoled by him. He just walks past her and doesn't seem to want to have anything to do with it. I think their marriage is probably damaged irreparably from this. Sometimes the death of a child does that in marriages, where every time he looks at her, he probably thinks about his dead son and all the memories they had together. And so the next is the King's Guard. I would say it's a pillar. Yes. So another pillar that gets knocked down is the King's Guard itself. The king and the queen always having protection by the King's Guard. You see here that instead of watching over the royal family, Cole, who's actually the lead of the King's Guard, is not doing guard. He is doing something else. And this tragically leads to the death of the king's son, and the king kind of, who was protecting them. Why are they so vulnerable? Why do they look so weak with this? And the King's Guard is supposed to prevent these things from happening. And it didn't. The King's Guard starts to fall apart because everybody's kind of like, where were you? Where were you? Where were you? Yeah, one symbolic moment that kind of captures all of this is the sullying of the white cloak. Cole is looking for someone to shift blame onto. So he sees that Eric's cloak is dirty. And it's dirty because he was out all night in the tunnels searching for the murderer of Jaehaerys. And
I thought it was dirty because they went to the mud on the streets in the procession.
Yeah, and he's just been so busy with the chaos of the murder of the heir to the Iron Throne that he hasn't had time to upkeep his uniform. And so this is when Cole's calling him a traitor, saying, we can't trust you because you stole your uniform. Like, it was the most ridiculous thing in the world, probably because Cole feels guilty because he, number one, as the head of the King's Guard, he never assigned protectors to the heir of the throne or to the queen. Like, why? He's protecting Queen Alicent very well, but she's no longer important. She's not an important character any longer. Since her husband died, she's not important. The new queen is, and her sons, and Cole's still up the booty of Alicent that he's not assigning protectors to who he should. He's pointing fingers at other people. And I think he wants to look good in front of the king. So he's trying to find what traitors he could. And like, it's kind of like find someone to blame so that people don't look at you type of thing. Okay, so that kind of sets up like a problem with the trust within the King's Guard, but also he wants to devise some sort of plan to make up for his failures. And so Cole's plan is that he's going to send Eric to impersonate his brother, sneak into the castle on Dragonstone, and kill Queen Rhaenyra. This is a break from tradition because technically a King's Guard protects the entire royal. It's not to spy, it's not to do subterfuge. It's to protect the lives of all of them. So that's a break, a big break.
All the great deeds are entered in the White Book. And I think we see in Cole how he himself has broken from that tradition of a noble person, even because when he's approaching Eric with this idea that he's very much a jerk. He goes from this guy, who, he's like love torn in the beginning to now we see Rhaenyra was right to not be with him. This guy is not, he's a jerk. I also want to point out there's several people that go and do things on their own. They go do things without being told, and they just kind of do it because they want to do it. We saw that with Cole. We saw that with Daemon. We see a lot of characters just act on their own.
That have devastating consequences.
Yes, and it always seems to not work out.
Yeah, so I think that definitely goes into the theme of a break, because they're not acting as a unit.
Yes. And they're not acting in what's in the best interest of the realm. Yeah. They're acting more of what's in their best interest, or they're just being impetuous.
Because Aemon killing Viserys was not in the best interest of Aemon because it puts him on a death list and puts the family closer to war. And then obviously Daemon arranging a murder of one of the household and ultimately the little baby, Jaehaerys, really hurt Rhaenyra and her bid to be queen, because once the rumor goes out that she's willing to kill babies in their crib, a lot of the lords might not, they'll be like, oh, this is a woman. She's too, her feelings get in the way of her ability to rule, and she'll even kill babies, So that's the last thing that the black side of the family needed too.
Even Aegon goes and seems to, his idea to kill all the rat catchers seemed to be just kind of his own thing. And we see how that goes against what he's trying to do.
Yeah.
It's like, so every time somebody, again, goes against Viserys, he was very much doing the right thing and doing the right thing for the realm and the right thing for the people. That we see that with him. And then before we get to the final, one of the blacksmith, who we know recognizes the issues with the money. We petitioned the king. He's talking to his wife about the price of chickens, and they're talking about how things have gone up. Small point is, again, Viserys' legacy is gone because when he was there, prices were low.
But it is a break because he's also the character who went to Aegon in court and officially complained about the prices of goods in the city. He's a blacksmith and he's employed by the royal house to make weaponry. He needed to raise, and how he needed money upfront to pay for the iron. He can't afford the raw materials. And the king promised him he would pay him first before, he delivered on his goods to help him. Obviously, he never made good on that promise.
Takes us to the final break that we want to talk about, and that's, as civil wars go, it's kind of known as brother against brother, right? A house divided. And we see that very literally in Eric versus Eric. That's set up obviously by each of them having their own reasons to support their own ruler, and set up by Cole's idea of, let's go do this. If he was successful, it would end the war. We see brother versus brother in that. And so this is a very, very symbolic.
Eric and Eric considered themselves one soul in two separate bodies. Eric's main fear when this was, what if I run into my brother? And Cole was like, well, just don't run into your brother. Like, but how do you know? The castle is big. Somebody might come around the corner. They did wind up running into each other. We don't know exactly how Eric knew that his brother was there. But you see that the brother goes in and he says, "Oh, I'm sorry, but I have to do this." And Rhaenyra's like, "What? I don't understand." And then he goes after her to try to kill her. And then Eric busts in and they start a duel basically to the death.
So we're not going to tell you who won that battle.
Maybe because we're not really clear who came on top.
I feel like this is purposely ambiguous.
Yeah, because we both saw it very differently.
So you are the side of Team Eric, and I'm the side of Team Eric.
The duel ended with one brother killing the other. And then the surviving brother walks up to Queen Rhaenyra and says, "I'm sorry," and does a samurai style self-killing with his sword. I thought that was Eric with an E, the one that was on Rhaenyra's side that brought her crown. I thought he said, "I'm sorry," because his twin looks just like him. He put her at risk to be killed. So I thought he was like apologizing, like, "I'm sorry. I left a weakness in your guard because someone like him could sneak through and pretend to be me." And then I thought he killed himself because he considered himself two souls in one body. And being that he killed his brother, he couldn't go on living. So how did you see the final scene?
I saw it as the opposite. And right away, I immediately thought that it was the other brother.
Eric with an A.
Yes. And I thought he said that because the one who died said, "You did this.
You separated us," or something.
Yeah, you separated us," or whatever. And so it was like he was pointing to saying, like, "You're the one who came in here and did this."
But even that I interpret differently, because I interpret it as he's yelling at Eric for leaving him, because Eric left King's Landing to go to Rhaenyra. So when he said, "You did this, you separated us," I interpreted that as Eric being mad at his brother for abandoning King's Landing to go serve Rhaenyra. And it's like, this is your fault because he chose to leave and put them on opposite sides. So we're interpreting the whole entire scene differently.
Yes. And so at the end, when he says, I think after he kills his brother, I think at that moment, it all comes to him that he knows why his brother made the choices he did. He knows why his brother elected the queen. I think that's what made him realize that he was wrong. He took the wrong path. He even followed the wrong orders from the wrong, like everything was wrong at that point. So wrong, the full weight of that didn't come to him until he killed his brother. And in which case he was like, "I am wrong." And I think he was apologizing because he was here to kill her. He came in to kill her. Like, "I'm sorry that it came down to this. And I'm sorry that it's this way. And I'm going to do the right thing and not kill you. I'm going to kill myself." So those are the two arguments that we have. Is that you can judge for yourself. I think it adds more to the intrigue, because at the end it doesn't matter, right? Both brothers die. The mission is unsuccessful. Rhaenyra is still alive. And it is, again, it's all about the metaphor. The house divide. The things that we saw in this episode that represents breaks from the Viserys' vision and his reign and so forth. Please make sure to stay tuned. Keep watching the show. We are the Justified Ancients of Ashai.